give you guys the option. And then did you have a slideshow or a presentation that you wanted to bring up, or?
Yeah, if you don't mind if I share my screen really quickly. I don't necessarily need it. It's just a couple extra slides, just showing some of our major brands in our portfolio. And
Okay. Yeah, let's see. I think I can make you co-host actually, so.
There should be like under security, there's an allow share screen too.
Security.
I might actually already have it. Let's see here.
Share screen.
Oh, no.
Okay. Okay. Try that now, if you can.
I think you have to stop too.
Oh, well, the other participant is sharing.
Yeah, so you have to stop and then he can share.
Okay.
Mr. WebEx,
Perfect.
you can literally, you can.
Connor's a gem to have. Thank you.
Oh, cool. Do you want me to start sharing now?
Yeah, I think it's 11:10. I just got a couple more people filing in, and I know a couple people are also like looking to see the recording if possible as well. So
yeah, absolutely. So go for it.
Yeah, sure. Whenever you're ready.
Excellent. Well, thanks everyone for joining today. I been kind of trying to readjust our recruiting strategy because obviously things are substantially different because of COVID. So I'm trying to reach out and go to places where I would be back in the day, and CPI was one of my key go-tos. So really excited. If you just joined, I used to be president a long time ago. I don't know, 3-4 years ago, something like that. So really excited to be back and excited to see the club continue to do some cool things. I just was reading a report on SoftBank money propping up all the new tech. Kind of curious if you guys have thoughts on that, and that's kind of been driving some of my more options activity lately in the Apple space and whatnot, but for another time. So Gallo, if you're not familiar, is the largest winery in the world. So it's started right at the end of Prohibition with what we call our popular tier products. So Gallo kind of for a long, long time was really strategic oriented as the really inexpensive wines. So you've heard like the old Night Train and the old Thunderbird and things along those lines, and has since gone on to become absolutely massive and has totally spanned the alcohol beverages portfolio, not just across wine, but across spirits as well. So right here we have more than 100 brands, but I pulled some of the what I consider more exciting or more staple brands in our portfolio. So the biggest one for a high growth perspective is High Noon right now. So you may have seen a lot of it and all of a sudden none of it. And it's because we were anticipating it to be huge, and it was probably 3 times the volume expectations of our already what started to be like unanticipatedly high numbers. And due to aluminum shortages and some other impacts, we had major out of supply issues that we're dealing with right now, to the point where we're like flying in aluminum on planes overseas, and it's taking some really substantial increases in our raw material costs to try to get supply back to where it needs to be to meet the new demand. But you see this in stores. That's a Gallo product, High Noon Sun Sips. The core staple of the portfolio of Gallo has been for probably a decade, if not longer, is Barefoot. So if you're familiar with Barefoot, that's what we have right here. So the classic 750 ml wine that's really the bread and butter of what we call our popular portfolio right now. And Barefoot on its own is the largest winery in the world. Just this one product within our portfolio is the largest by volume. So we actually, and from a production standpoint, well, our largest facility, and we have from massively ranging in size, but I would guess over 20 different production facilities. Just our largest facility is the largest winery in the world. So we're kind of in a class on our own as far as scale. And we have an SEC pending acquisition that would further solidify our space. But as I said, it's been probably near 2 years now that the SEC has been pending and forcing us to drop particular products so we're not too dominant on particular price points and things like that. So a lot of exciting news to come on our acquisition space, but a lot of growth, which is a question I've gotten quite a few times this year, which I think is really interesting, is where do we see ourselves and where's our growth strategy? And it's a real mix of organic and inorganic growth. So we have got a lot of natural growth from in-house launches. High Noon probably being staple. We have a couple of other exciting ones I can talk about, but also a lot of growth through acquisition. So pre-COVID, but post like this new world wine, where we're seeing a lot of growth is what we call on-premise with our premium wines, which is your bars and your restaurants. So it was a trend that was moving away from Gallo for a while because we're big on the grocery retail chain stuff, buying the the $9 to $15 bottles of wine, and then the Xers and the millennials are moving much towards the premium wines, which you see here. So starting with the Martini acquisition, which happened quite a while ago, but they've moved significantly more into that space. To Orin Swift is one of the highest profile, which is like Dave Finney is a legendary winemaker in that space. I mean, he started Orin Swift, and he's got a big personality and a lot of people following him. He's kind of the Elon Musk of the wine space. So he started to really lean in on Gallo, and we've purchased Orin Swift from him, and they've done co-partnerships on a couple other launches that he's done. So now the span is like a lot of organic growth in our spirits portfolio. We have the huge lockdown market for retail, and now not only do we have the Barefoot, the $9 bottle of wine that you pick up at the grocery store, but we're also in the Robert Parker 100 Point legendary wines and the Orin Swift, legendary Napa Cali and Stagecoach Vineyard, and ultra premium category as well. So something for everyone in there. It's pretty cool. We've also really increased our A&P spend, so we've got a lot of celebrity partnerships. So that's rolling out more and more by the year. It's gaining steam. So one of our most recent campaigns is Keenan from SNL and Aubrey from Parks and Recs. You can see there from one of our more recent, but we've worked with a lot of different celebrities, which has been pretty cool. I haven't had the opportunity to meet any of them yet. Maybe as I grow my own influence within the company, that would be pretty cool. So significant, in fact, bar none to any competitor in the space for Gallo. So now steering a little bit more towards finance and accounting specific. When I was in your shoes, what I was really looking for was an environment that was continuing to be really challenging, but also in a space that I thought would have a lot of cool people. I really didn't want my social life to just die as soon as I entered the workforce and started having to become an adult. So I thought that wine and alcohol is probably a good place to find a good mesh of a high growth environment with interesting people that might be attracted to that space. And what Gallo really has going for it is it's very much a rotational, high paced program. So it's not a good fit if you're looking for, it's chaotic for, your first 6 months, your first year, and then you kind of settle into your role and then you move on to the next job in 20 years or whatever. It's very much if you're performing well and you're pursuing other opportunities, it's a find a new spot every year or so type environment. So for perspective, I graduated 2016 and I traveled for a little bit. So I started in 2017, like Q1, Q2 of 2017, and I've just started my fourth role. So another question I get a lot is, what would I be doing? Which is difficult to answer with certainty because there's so many different areas that you might find yourself. But for a little bit of perspective on that, I could walk through my own journey a little bit. And for me, it started when I was in capital planning, was my first official role at the company. And from there, it was what we call like our back end. So working on supply and where we get the different elements and assets needed to actually produce the wine itself. And worked on a lot of different cool projects in there, but it was in general, along with forecasting, budgeting, things like that, classic analyst stuff. It was also taking into account and trying to determine whether or not projects were worth pursuing. So it would be helping some of the engineering departments or research and development departments and coming up with like the tangible costs that you would be eliminating by pursuing a project. So a good one was like a new filtration method, which we use like diatomaceous earth, which is like a literal, it's like tiny like microorganisms that leave skeletons that have very, very fine holes to them that are used for filtration. And it's somewhat expensive. And so there's a new filtration method that would use less of that diatomaceous earth. And then it would also be more power and water efficient. So it's getting all those in, but also kind of thinking more broadly like, okay, well, if our Fresno facility uses half of the diatomaceous earth that it was using, then our price is going to be increased for the other areas where we're still using it. It's trying to think creatively about all the different aspects that might be impacted by a project. and now I'm in the front end. So kind of totally switched gears. So I was in the sales finance group, so supporting the sales teams with reporting and whatever it is that they needed. And most recently, I'm in what we call customer development, and that's working with like the really big names. So like your Walmart, your Kroger's, Aldi's, things like that. Retail, typically, there's also on-premise chains like Buffalo Wild Wings and things like that, but typically more retail-oriented that sell just huge amounts of wine. And that one's kind of a cool role for me. That's a little bit nerve-wracking because my other roles, and for most part, most roles are kind of, there's a lineage. So there's people you talk to and you're like, okay, well, he did it before me and she did it before him. And so what do I could make small iterative improvements, and I can, make this report run more smoothly. I can add in additional metrics and maybe add a new report here and there. Where can I provide value? And this new one is a big opportunity because customer development typically hasn't had much finance support. So now it's way, way more gray space and way more, what is it that we want to do? So more meeting with the people I'm supporting and saying like, okay, I'm here now. So, what data can I provide? What data can we purchase? If we're looking at competitors, we can purchase data to get an eye on what they're doing and where their pricing's at, and where they are on the shelf and all sorts of different various things like that. And I could also look internally and say, okay, is it the right move to focus on the vodka flavors? Like, are they moving faster? Do they have tighter margins? Things like that. Try to help the sales force, point in the best direction possible. So in light of all that, Gallo is what I would say is very culture focused. So it's, as I mentioned before, it's an exceptionally challenging environment, but it's one that I've met here it's cooperative, not competitive. So meaning it's, I've heard stories of other environments where it's a high pressure, where you're gauged in your performance relative to your peers, and it's very much a competitive environment. And you say, okay, everyone's doing this thing, and who's doing it fastest, who's doing it the most efficiently, who's the most accurate. And that's not the way that Gallo is at all. They hold you to exceptionally high standards, but it's also exceptionally cooperative. So even in my new team, there's only 2 of us, because I said it's a fast-growing, brand new area of the company, but we're still part of the larger Salesforce entity, not Salesforce, but sales finance. And so you're very tight-knit in your team, which I like a lot. So you have your peers that you're best friends with, and you have your mentors and superiors that are looking out for you and trying to develop a plan for your personal career. And the last one that I've added for this year that I haven't talked about in years past, but it's become really relevant, is the company is exceptionally resistant to recessions. So I put exceptionally stable because in an environment where we're having lots of economic uncertainty, and we have reports of people struggling to find full-time positions, Gallo has been the opposite. Our operating performance has improved pretty dramatically amid COVID, because as I mentioned, we've been transitioning towards what we call our on-premise environment, the restaurants and the bars and whatnot, but we're still very much oriented towards the retail chain. So as people retreat from those more expensive wines that they're purchasing at bars, they're still drinking, but they're buying their familiar Barefoot brand they know and love that they buy at their local grocery store. So Gallo gets a higher percent of those dollars than they do for on-premise. So it's been a really, really, really strong year for us. So I also just took a snip of the Glassdoor website for E&J Gallo. So you can see we're top 50 company to work for the last 4 years. So as of 2020, we're number 41, but we've been top 50 for the last 4 years. Also labeled as a hiring surge, which I thought was interesting, which is true. There's been a lot of demand for new people as we try to figure out what growth of this is permanent, and what our results going to look like next year. But it's been true in my case that it's very much an employee-oriented company. And the last scripted thing that I wanted to talk about before I ask any questions and help out with how you might apply, or any questions about what it would look like going in the future. They just opened up their new building. I'm not there now. I've been in my past calls over the last 2 weeks. I've been going in to show it off. It's kind of weird. It literally looks like this right now because there's no one in there. But this is the new building that is opened up, and it is exceptional. It's pretty cool to kind of have an environment that that really matches, where you would like to be. Hard to put into words, but it's a pretty cool environment to go in day to day, and especially when you like go and you have tours and your family like gets wine during the holidays, and then they go in and you see where you work every day. It's pretty a big feeling of pride, showing that this is where you're going every day. And with that, I can plug you into some additional resources for more people to talk to. We have additional, more formal Gallo-specific info sessions. The application deadline is October 11th, so you have a couple weeks to put your application together, which is just enough time. So it's not a rush, but it's definitely not one I would put off, to make sure that you have a really well thought out application. What I will say is we get a lot of what I'll call no-name applications, meaning that no one in the finance department recognizes the name when the application comes through. So if you're eager and serious, I would highly, highly recommend that you have at least 1 or 2, 3 finance people currently working with the company that are vouching for you. And with that, if you have any questions, I would be more than happy to answer them.
Wait, what did you say after vouching for you? Because you kind of cut out there for a second.
Oh, gotcha. Let's think back. So, basically we get a lot of applications that from people we've never heard of, which isn't bad. We still HR looks at your resume, but I would highly encourage you to go to the info sessions and and have some time one-on-one talking with someone in the finance department, so that when they come through, then I'm like, oh, I recognize. Sorry, your name is just cut off there, but anyway, but so someone recognizes your name, and you give you a much better chance to get to the first round of interviews. And that's the case with any company, not just Gallo, but your chances versus a blind application versus getting a chance to speak to someone in one-on-one and have them know who you are is just vastly different. But good question. Very good question.
I got a quick one.
Yeah.
How did you first hear about Gallo?
That's a good question. For me, I had kind of an unfair advantage because I'm from the Central Valley. So I kind of grew up, and my dad's best friend's next door neighbor was a Gallo person in the engineering department. And I grew up just like absolutely idolizing him. So we kind of grew up, and when I ended up going to Cal Poly, I kind of had Gallo in the back of my mind. So it was, because you think like, that's the person I want to be, and like I want to grow up and be exactly like him. So cool. And then once I saw them at the career fair and talked to them the first year, I went all in on Gallo, like 100%. It was completely reckless. I had no backup companies. I wasn't applying anywhere else. I just was going there every year until I was old enough to finally apply, to the point where everyone like knew my name and knew I was coming. And I would like just get dressed up in my suit and print out a resume just to go to the Gallo booth. So I was lucky in that I was pretty certain that this is where I wanted to be early on.
Well, that's great. Safe to say it worked out.
Yeah, thankfully. Yeah, that no backup plan was not wise, but it did work out in my case. I wouldn't recommend that strategy necessarily.
A quick question. Oh, sorry. Yeah, you can go, Mason.
Yeah, I was just curious if you guys offer internships as well, or if you're currently just recruiting for full times.
That's an excellent question. And unfortunately for finance and accounting, we don't offer internships, only full-time positions. So if you're not graduate level, then I would just recommend keeping Gallo in mind and visiting us at the career fair and coming in until you're old enough to apply for a full-time position.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Are you guys recruiting strictly finance and accounting majors for the role?
Another good question. We have branched out a little bit. So we've done some econ, and we do ag business, and we definitely branch out. And we've also had people transition from some of the STEM majors into finance. But most people are finance, accounting, and most people from Cal Poly end up in finance. Not to say that there's certainly accounting roles, but for whatever reason, we just typically have gotten a lot of mostly finance people from Cal Poly thus far. We also have audit as well, if that's something that interests you. I can't speak to audit very much, but I could connect you to a resource that could give you more information on audit.
How did the STEM majors end up in the finance department? How's that?
That's a good question. I think it's just speaking to some of my old roommates back in the day, they pursued engineering because that was a cool path, and clearly Cal Poly is an excellent resource for engineers. But they saw themselves in the financial, the fintech kind of space, and they just saw themselves working with money and pursuing an MBA after graduating. So getting a finance experience with an engineering degree is a good path for that.
Is that something? That's something where they got internships, though, right?
Internships for engineering are available for Gala, but same not for.
No, I just meant like how they ended up. They already had previous internships, right, before they got there. So it wasn't just like, oh, you have an engineering degree. It was like, oh, you have previous experience.
That's a good question. Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. I believe
Okay.
that they were able to apply and show that they have a working knowledge of the basic structure of the P&L and things like that. But that's a good question. Yeah. Excellent question so far. I'm liking it.
Does anybody have any other questions for Jeff?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, if you do, after this video, then we can have, you could send me your questions to me, and I can send them to Jeff, or we can get in contact. Jeff, would you mind if I was to display your email in an email through Cal Poly Investing after this meeting?
Yeah, absolutely. That's perfect.
Sweet. So just so you guys can get in contact with Jeff if you're interested in the opportunity. Okay. Sweet. I think that's all good. Well, thank you so much, Jeff. Really appreciate you coming by and presenting. Absolutely. And we'll be in contact in the near future. Thanks so much.
Sounds good. I look forward to it. Keep
you.
doing great work. Great to see CPI going. All right,
Yeah,
guys.
I have one last question for you. Do you know if anybody still has access to the Instagram account, or is it just like dead and nobody has any idea?
I have absolutely no idea.
Okay.
I reached out to,
figured I'd ask.
first of all, we have the time. I reached out to Brian because I, for the life of me, can't find any email about having set up a profile or how to regain access to it. So, Jared had the ownership. So I reached out to him, and hopefully he'll be able to get us into the LinkedIn. As far as Instagram, I have no idea.
Yeah, no worries.
I just figured I'd ask. Thank you.
We'll get it situated. Thank you anyway. Really
no
appreciate
problem. All right, guys. Have a good one.
it. You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice job.
too.
Okay, sweet. All right, guys. I'm going to go back into the presentation that we have today. Where is that at? Just give me one quick second. Yeah, so if you guys have any other questions for Jeff, just let me know, and I'll give you his contact information. Trying to go through the drive here. Okay. Can you guys see that all right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And then, so Jack, you want to take this one?
Yeah. All right. So I kind of touched on this last week to the people who were here, but we're going to be doing a paper trading game. So pretty much a simulation. Each player is going to have $1 million starting budget, and we will have quarterly winners. I think we're going to end up not doing an annual game. I think we're just going to do it quarter by quarter at this point. Just kind of makes more sense. And then weekly leaderboard updates, and it'll just be a good way for us to more or less just track the markets, kind of probably give us some talking points about why some companies are doing well and why some aren't, or like why the markets are doing what they're doing. And give people who are just give some hands-on experiences to all of us, as well as give us something to compete over. And then we'll hopefully have prizes, t-shirts, stuff like that. And I will be sending out, or we will be sending out an email sometime over the next few days with instructions on how to log or how to join and log in. I'm actually going to throw the link in the chat here in a few, like once I'm done talking, with the password. So if you guys want to do that today, you're welcome to. But if not, you'll also have an opportunity later, and we'll make sure we get that information out to everybody. So something to look forward to. Yeah.
Sweet. Thanks.
Well, in the fourth quarter will basically be the annual one anyways. So you end up getting quarters and annually either way.
Yeah, we'll all
Wait,
figure
what's
it
that?
out. Okay. All good. So, Mason, can you take this one?
Yeah. Yeah. So one thing I think that people were saying to Jeremy is that people are looking for resources, and like how to learn more and how to decide what are some stocks that you'd want to invest in. I think a great place to start is really just reading the news and trying to be up to date with what's going on in the world. I For that, I like the Wall Street Journal because I think it's a really market focused news outlet, and they're talking about stocks all the time. It's like most people on Wall Street are looking at the Wall Street Journal. I think that's good. And then also, if you're looking for more specific tools, there are a few that I really have enjoyed looking at. And hey, Jeremy, do you want to let me share my screen?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
So, okay.
Do you have the ability to?
Okay, so can everyone see this?
Yep.
Okay, so this is finviz.com, and this is a cool website that you can use. That I think its most useful tool is its screener. And what a stock screener is basically just it's a series of filters that allows you to choose to specify a bunch of criteria and gives you a list of things you want to invest in. And so this can be used if you're investing with a fundamental or a more technical approach. The difference there being, for those who don't know, fundamental is going to be based off of essentially like earnings and valuation metrics, whereas a technical approach is going to be looking more at charts. And so I was thinking I can just go into a quick example and like walk through this website a little bit. So this is the home page. There's this, which is, it shows, I think maybe the S&P 500, and all the blocks that are in red represent companies that have, whose stock prices have declined today, and everything in green shows companies that are doing well. As we can see, this is looking like a more red day, or somewhere kind of in between. So that, I mean, but then, so if you go here to the screener, you look and you see, okay, there are tons of stocks. What would be a good stock that I'd be interested in? So you can just start filtering in stock in things that you're more interested in, or might be applied. So maybe like you only want things that are traded on the NASDAQ. You are only looking for companies that have greater than $2 billion market cap. Like you're only looking for US stocks. You want to be able to trade options or short these stocks. So that's another filter. And you're looking for stocks under 50 because you're cheap like me and you don't have a lot of money. So those are some, and then you can go more technical and look, and you can say, okay, I'm looking for a stock. And this is actually, these are a great way to learn more about like what each of these ratios mean. You can look and, so yeah, let's go to technical, and you say, what is RSI? And then you can go to Investopedia and look, and RSI is the relative strength index. Basically, it says if something is overbought or oversold, it's based on momentum. And honestly, I don't know like in that detail how much it works, but just for an example, you can look and be like, okay, I want something that is oversold, which would imply that that it maybe will go up in the future. So you have some screeners, and then you can go to charts and like say, okay, I'm doing technical analysis. I want to see which of these charts looks good to me. Like then click on this one. Okay, looks like it might be bouncing off of a resistance line here. What are my moves? So those are some tools. I think that was really interesting for me to like get on Finviz and just start poking around. And it got me interested in like technical analysis and learning more about like what's going on. I haven't honestly traded that much off of technical analysis just because I'm not that confident in my skills. But I think it's super interesting and got
Oh,
me excited to learn more. Similar website. It also has good charting tools. Yahoo Finance has a bunch of resources. But yeah, I mean, I hope that's helpful and gives you guys like a little bit of of a kind of intro to like some of the resources that are out there.
Sweet, thank you. I'm gonna hop back in the.
Oh yeah, I'll stop sharing.
No, you're good. Okay. See a couple more things for today, guys. Here we are. See, all these resources are pretty good for analyzing stocks. And then I'm gonna have Charlie talk about some current event that's happening today.
Yeah, so I think an interesting thing to talk about today would be the massive increase in gold prices over the past couple of months. And as you can see on the slide, gold prices and yields are significantly up across the year. Future prices have risen astronomically, especially due to COVID. And so there's this Wall Street Journal article that I think Jeremy's pulling up right now that kind of gives a little bit of a rundown. But before we get into that, I was curious to see if anyone had any thoughts on why gold prices and futures might be so high.
well, I think that's some uncertainty, isn't it? Because gold rises when there's uncertainty and there's a debate in an election. So
Yeah.
and a
Yeah,
possible
definitely.
recession.
I think that's true. I think there's also like gold is very commonly used as a hedge for inflation. And with like a bunch of stimulus, I saw a lot of people projected high inflation, so that could be a reason.
Yeah, so that's a little bit of what this is saying. I think it's a combination of multiple factors along both of those lines. This article was talking about how the Fed, obviously interest rates are very low right now. So yields, real yields on a lot of fixed income securities, especially like tips and whatnot, real yields are negative because as inflation is obviously increasing, the yields is flat, very low. And so a lot of people are turning to alternative sources of investing. And gold is seen to be, as Mason was talking about, a hedge against inflation, and people are kind of losing faith in the dollar. And so that's what a lot of people are saying. And the Fed recently talked about they have plans to keep interest rates really low, even in spite of any inflationary kind of pressures. And so people are predicting that the dollar is going to become weaker in years to come. And the question that I would pose to the group is, do you think that gold is going to come back and replace the dollar? Because a lot of people like Warren Buffett have just completely spoken against gold. But now, as we're seeing, the dollar is going to be potentially a lot weaker in the coming months and years.
Yeah, I would contend like the gold is definitely not going to come back as like the base. I think one of Jay Powell's comments was that like we need to rethink about how we look at monetary policy's impact on inflation, because we've had like near zero interest rates for almost a decade, and it hasn't caused inflation. In fact, we've been under inflation targets for a long time. I don't, and part of that is due to a ton of foreign investment in U.S. Treasuries. So like as long as people still view those as safe, and a lot of investors are like buying those using dollars, like a ton, like a huge number, then I think I don't see inflation spiking. It could happen. Obviously I don't know, but I'm not too worried about it, and I definitely wouldn't think that gold would go back to being the standard. I've heard some interesting arguments, and I need to like read more about it, but that's my take. I don't know. What else do you guys think?
Maybe not. Maybe if you can pull up, Jeremy, a chart that shows just how much gold's risen. It's absolutely insane just over the past few months. Gold prices were like,
sorry,
I
I'm
think,
not saying that it's not like doing super well. Like I definitely don't
yeah,
doubt
no,
that
no,
at
no.
all. I would just be surprised if they went back to using the gold standard. Like most economists have kind of scoffed at that notion.
Especially when it's just pretty much a rock. And I don't know, is there electronic gold besides Bitcoin? I don't know if there's really,
Yeah,
because we're not going to
Well,
trade
one-
physically. We're just not. It's just
right. So
so
I
it has to
don't
be in
think
the form of Bitcoin or
they're
something else.
making that claim, but so I've heard an argument that like because gold is finite, and like things like Bitcoin kind of are, in that they take so much resources to produce, they are less likely to experience inflation or something like that, because like there literally is a specified amount in the ground.
Well, I think regardless of what happens, they're both deflationary, like just naturally. Like Bitcoin is naturally deflationary because there's less and less created every year, similar to gold. But it's definitely different because with gold, we can change how much we mine, but with Bitcoin, it's kind of hard to do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting. I'd be interested to learn more about it though.
Well, it looks like in March it was 140, and now we're at like whatever 180. I'm looking at the spider one right now, but
Okay. Yeah, I think that was a.
or is it the gold ticker is the best one?
No, I don't. I think that was a specific company.
Oh, that's
probably.
the one Warren Buffett invested in. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. This.
Yeah, if you just look up gold futures, you should get a pretty interesting one.
What is it? Just gold futures?
Like
Yeah.
December 2020 ones. That's what they all say. Gold December 20.
I don't know actually.
Even if you look at those gold, it says it's on the COMEX exchange.
See if it gives us a chart here.
Yeah,
I think
the
that's
one
the
was
site
looking
that
at.
I use.
Okay. You want it, Charlie? Oh, this one?
Sorry? Yeah, that's the one that I found.
Okay.
And
I don't know.
even if you would have bought gold at the bottom, you would have made nowhere near as much money. You would have been better off just holding all the stocks. I mean, it wouldn't have. I mean, even the S&P 500.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting seeing how people are finding alternative ways to invest their
Yeah.
money. Like when they're like, obviously nobody wants to put all of their money in the stock market, and so they're looking around trying to be like, oh, where else can I put my money and get a decent return?
Yeah, that's definitely true, especially with such low interest rates. Like it really does feel like if you're not in the stock market, you're just missing out. Like you have to be really bearish to be fully out, because there aren't that many other asset classes that like are paying anything.
Yeah. I mean, relatively.
Right.
Gold stocks. I've been doing some equity crowdfunding. That's been great. That's like private
What is
investment.
that?
It's like, so you know how like, you know what?
Oh, actually, I've read about that.
Have you read about it? I actually really love it. It's really exciting because you have startups on there. It's basically Shark Tank. I mean, you're a venture capitalist, but you can only invest, a few $100s. So it's like crowdfunding in the sense of like when you buy a company's product on like Kickstarter, except you're actually investing in the company. You're not actually buying the product. You're buying, shares in the company. So that's been really fun, but obviously you have to wait like, 3-5 years to even get a return out of any of those because they're all private companies. But there's definitely some interesting plays in there that you would
yeah. How are those deals structured? Is it like, or do you go in with a bunch of other people on like?
Yeah, so there's like thousands of people on some of them. There's even hundreds on some of them. It depends on, how popular it is. Like some of them have these insane marketing campaigns, just to get like a boatload of money, like raise millions for their app that might not even work. So you definitely have to do a lot of research because there's a lot of just hype on some of them that, you wouldn't get with venture capital.
Well, that's another issue. Another thing is that like you have no way of, I mean, I would assume you're not like speaking with the founder, right? Like this could be some scumbag.
Well, I mean, like a lot of them,
probably not, but like you know
Start
what I mean?
Engine, which I like the most, they have a comment section, so you can ask questions in there and they'll respond to you within like a day. And usually the founder is on there, so that's pretty good because then you can actually hear from them. And then sometimes they have webinars, all that stuff that startups might have.
Yeah.
Like Mr. Wonderful just did a pitch presentation the other day that I went to. They had I think 5 companies. Yeah, they all pitched Mr. Wonderful. They were all going into equity crowdfunding, but they pitched him first so that he could critique them before they went public or they went private equity crowdfunding. But that was really interesting to see too, how he analyzed the companies versus how they do it on Shark Tank or how you do it on the website.
Yeah. What's the platform? I remember I think I read an article about like it's an app, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of websites now. I think for me, Start Engine's been my favorite, this one. Mr. Wonderful, or whatever his name is, Robert O'Leary, is actually one of the like outreach people for them. He's like an influencer. They pay him to be like a part of the company. And he actually really likes that company. There's a lot of companies on there. You can invest in them actually themselves. And then I think as far as the largest one goes, it's kind of hard because there's so many at this point that it's like.
Yeah, but what I'm curious about is like, what are you getting? Are you getting a chunk of equity? Like, are you just getting?
It's like, well, most of them are common stock. Some of them are common stock. Some of them are safe, which is a secured.
Yeah, it's
for future equity. So you're getting like
a simple agreement for future.
Simple agreement. That's what it is. So some of them are those. Some I think it's mostly just either you get stock or you get an agreement for future equity.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's cool.
Sweet. All right. Well, I think we're gonna close this one out. It's almost time. Yeah, Connor, if you if you're interested, maybe one time you can do a little presentation on that as well. I'm sure there's quite a few other people that are would be interested in something like that. And for next week's meeting, guys, I noticed that there's a ton of freshmen and sophomores on campus, so really trying to get the word out so we can have some more meaningful discussions with you know, a number of people in here for the next coming weeks. So that'll be on my end. But thank you guys for, you know, hearing Jeff out and, you know, being involved. Appreciate it.
Yeah, let's get that Discord out. Let's do it.
Yep. Alrighty.
Sounds good.
Be
Is
in
that gonna come
contact.
over email or?
Yeah, I'll send it over email, and I'll
Okay,
probably reach
sounds
out
good.
to you if I need help on it. Okay. All
All
right.
right, sounds good.
Yep.
See ya.
Peace.
See ya.